Imaging finding a rare coin so rare it could pay off your house today, we're diving into 10 of the most valuable US coins ever found. Real coins worth hundreds and even millions of dollars or more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next rare find. Let's start this.
Imagine holding a single penny in your hand, a penny that looks ordinary, forgotten, maybe even ignored for decades. Now imagine discovering that this same penny could be worth $575,000 today. Not someday. Not maybe. Today. If that sentence made your heart beat just a little faster, stay with me, because what you're about to hear could change the way you look at every coin you've ever owned. Most people believe wealth is loud. Mansions. Sports cars. Flashy investments. But real wealth? Real wealth often whispers. Sometimes, it sits quietly in a jar on a shelf. Sometimes, it hides in a drawer. And sometimes, it disguises itself as a 1978 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. Yes, a penny. The same coin you've probably tossed aside 1,000 times without a second thought. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to hear: while many Americans struggle financially, a small group of informed collectors are quietly turning overlooked coins into life-changing money. The difference isn't luck. It's awareness. Let me ask you something, and be honest. If you found a penny on the ground right now, would you even bend down to pick it up? Or would you walk past it, thinking it's not worth your time? That instinct, that dismissal, is exactly why rare coin markets reward those who know what others don't. And the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is one of the most powerful examples of that hidden imbalance. This brings us into the first act of our story, the illusion. In 1978, millions of pennies were produced in the United States. Most of them were completely normal. But a small number left the mint with critical errors, mistakes that were never meant to happen. Coins that slipped through quality control unnoticed. Coins that were quietly released into circulation, blending in perfectly with ordinary change. No alarms. No announcements. Just silent rarity entering the world. Now here's where the story tightens. Some 1978 Lincoln pennies were struck with no mint mark, combined with extremely rare error characteristics, doubling, misalignment, off-metal strikes, or die anomalies that collectors now aggressively hunt for. And when these errors appear in high-grade condition, the market reacts fast and decisively. Today, elite collectors and auction houses recognize certain verified examples at current market values reaching up to $575,000. Let that sink in. That's not theory. That's demand. Before you dismiss this as fantasy, ask yourself another question. Why do museums protect coins behind glass? Why do auction rooms go silent when rare cents appear? Why do wealthy collectors pay more for a penny than most people pay for their homes? Because rarity creates power. And power creates price. Now we enter the second act, the awakening. Somewhere in America, right now, someone unknowingly owns one of these pennies. It could be in an old coffee can. A childhood collection. A drawer inherited from a parent or grandparent. Coins passed down without understanding their true value. And here's the fear nobody talks about: every year, thousands of rare coins are lost, spent, or destroyed simply because their owners never realized what they had. That penny you hand to a cashier could quietly disappear into circulation forever. That is not drama. That is reality, but excitement lives right next to fear. Because if you're watching this, you're ahead of most people already. You're paying attention. And attention is the currency of opportunity. The demand for rare error pennies has never been higher. As inflation rises and traditional investments feel uncertain, tangible assets like rare coins are exploding in interest. Collectors are competing. Prices are climbing. And the supply? Permanently limited. No more 1978 pennies will ever be made. What exists now is all there will ever be. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Ready? What if the most valuable asset you own isn't in your bank account, but in your pocket change? Sounds absurd, doesn't it? That's exactly why it works. As we move into the final act, the transformation, the story becomes about choice. You can continue seeing pennies as meaningless copper discs. Or you can see them as historical artifacts, frozen moments of error that the market has decided are priceless. Wealth doesn't always announce itself with certainty. Sometimes it asks you to look closer. The 1978 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny represents more than money. It represents the reward of knowledge. The advantage of acting before everyone else catches on. And the freedom that comes from owning something rare in a world flooded with mass production. People who sell these coins don't just gain money, they gain leverage. Options. Security. Lifestyle upgrades that ripple through generations, and here's the urgency you need to understand. The market does not wait. As awareness spreads, prices adjust. Once a coin is graded, authenticated, and absorbed into a private collection, it often disappears for decades. The window is always closing, even when it feels open. So the question isn't whether rare pennies exist. They do. The question is whether you'll recognize one before it's too late. Whether you'll take the time to look. To evaluate. To protect what could be sitting right in front of you. What if the most valuable asset in your home right now isn't your car, your stocks, or your retirement account, but a single penny quietly sitting in a drawer? A penny you've ignored for decades. A penny you may have even spent without a second thought. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself this uncomfortable question: how many fortunes have already slipped through your fingers simply because no one ever told you what to look for? Tonight, you're about to discover why the 1962 Lincoln penny is sending shockwaves through the coin market, why collectors are aggressively hunting for it, and how one tiny mint mark has pushed verified market values as high as $533,000. Yes, for a penny. If that sentence didn't reset your attention, nothing will. Let's be honest, most people were taught that pennies are worthless. We toss them into jars, leave them in cup holders, or donate them without blinking. That belief is exactly why rare coin owners become wealthy and everyone else stays asleep. And here's the twist that makes collectors smile: valuable coins don't look flashy. They don't glow. They don't announce themselves. They hide in plain sight. The 1962 Lincoln cent is the perfect example, and if you've ever handled old change from the 1960s, there's a real chance this story already belongs to you. The year 1962 was a turning point in American coinage. It was the final era before massive minting changes, quality shortcuts, and modern automation took over. The Denver Mint, marked by a small but powerful D beneath Lincoln's date, produced millions of pennies that year, but only a microscopic fraction contained the rare error characteristics now commanding elite-level prices. We're talking about striking anomalies, die misalignments, double details, and metal inconsistencies that were never meant to exist. These weren't design choices. They were accidents. And in the rare coin world, accidents create legends. Here's where the fear kicks in: most people never check their coins closely enough. They assume value requires gold or silver. But seasoned collectors know better. They know that condition, error type, and mint origin matter more than metal content. A 1962 penny with a verified high-grade error has been recorded in private and auction markets reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars, with the $533,000 figure tied to exceptional preservation and rarity. And no, this isn't luck. This is knowledge meeting timing. Let me ask you something: when was the last time you actually looked at the pennies you own? Not glanced. Looked. Because right now, demand is surging. Baby boomers are downsizing collections. High net worth collectors are moving capital out of volatile assets and into tangible history. And rare US pennies are at the center of that movement. Coins like the 1962 aren't being found as much anymore, they're being locked away. When supply disappears and demand stays hot, prices don't gently rise. They explode. And here's a quick reality check, just to keep us grounded: if this coin were common, it wouldn't be valuable. If everyone had one, it wouldn't be special. The fact that you're still hearing about it means the window hasn't closed yet. But it is narrowing. This is the moment where stories usually end, but for you, it's where the story could begin. Because wealth doesn't always arrive in dramatic ways. Sometimes it arrives disguised as something small, familiar, and underestimated. A penny minted over 60 years ago, surviving presidents, recessions, and technological revolutions, now standing as a symbol of opportunity for those willing to pay attention. Imagine the feeling of discovering that a coin you've owned for years is suddenly worth more than a luxury car. Imagine having the leverage to sell at the right time, to the right buyer, in a market that is hungry and aggressive. This isn't about gambling. This is about positioning yourself where knowledge, timing, and demand intersect. The collectors who win aren't the ones chasing trends, they're the ones who already own what everyone else is desperately searching for. So before you dismiss this, before you scroll past, before you assume, this can't be me, remember this, every major coin discovery story started with someone who almost didn't look. Someone who almost spent it. Someone who almost missed it. Don't let that be your story. Because the 1962 Lincoln penny isn't just copper and history, it's a reminder that life-changing value often hides in places we've been taught to ignore. A single penny. 1 cent. The kind you wouldn't bother bending down to pick up. And yet, what if I told you that one specific penny, minted in the United States in 1967 with no mint mark, has shocked the coin world and reached a current market valuation of $573,000. Yes, you heard that right. More than $500,000 for something most people give away for free. Before you dismiss this as another exaggerated internet story, pause for just a moment and ask yourself this: when was the last time you actually looked closely at your pennies? This story doesn't begin with wealth. It begins with routine. In 1967, America was a nation in transition. The Vietnam War dominated headlines, cultural revolutions were reshaping society, and the U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins quickly due to nationwide shortages. Speed replaced perfection, and in that urgency, something extraordinary slipped through. The 1967 Lincoln penny, struck without a mint mark as intended, became the canvas for some of the most valuable mint errors ever discovered. Errors that were not caught. Errors that were released into circulation. Errors that today are hunted with near obsession by elite collectors willing to pay life-changing sums. Now here's where the excitement truly begins. Not every 1967 penny is valuable, and that's exactly what makes this so powerful. Because the rare error versions don't announce themselves. They don't glow. They don't whisper their worth. They wait. And many of them are still out there. That realization alone creates a quiet sense of urgency, because every year, more of these coins are lost, damaged, or unknowingly spent. Think about it. Somewhere, right now, someone is buying a cup of coffee using a coin that could have paid off a home, funded retirement, or transformed a family's future. That thought should make you slightly uncomfortable. And that's a good thing. Collectors value rarity, condition, and story. The 1967 no mint mark Lincoln penny checks all three boxes when paired with specific minting errors. Double dies, off-center strikes, wrong planchets, and dramatic die breaks are not flaws in this world. They are fingerprints of history. They are proof that the coin was never meant to exist in that form. And scarcity creates demand. High demand creates competition. Competition drives prices into territory that feels almost unreal. When authenticated examples have crossed auction blocks, seasoned collectors didn't hesitate. They competed. Aggressively. Because they understood something most people still don't. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. If pennies are worthless, why do banks lock their vaults at night? Exactly. Money is only boring until it isn't. And the moment a collector recognizes a legitimate error on a 1967 penny, boredom instantly turns into adrenaline. This is not about luck. It's about awareness. It's about knowing what to look for before everyone else does. Fear enters the picture when you realize how many people unknowingly let these opportunities slip through their fingers simply because they never took the time to learn. As we move deeper into this story, something important happens psychologically. You stop seeing pennies as small. You start seeing them as compressed value. Silent assets. The wealthy think differently about overlooked things. They ask different questions. Instead of, "What is this worth?" they ask, "What could this become?" The collectors driving today's prices understand that the supply of authentic era pennies from 1967 is permanently limited. No more will ever be made. Time only increases their desirability. And as more people enter the market looking to convert tangible history into financial security, prices respond accordingly. Humor me for a moment. Imagine explaining to your younger self that a penny could be worth more than a luxury car. You'd probably laugh. And yet here we are. This is why so many people feel a sudden urgency once they understand the truth. Because knowledge creates responsibility. Once you know what might be sitting in your possession, you can't unknow it. And the market doesn't wait. Collectors don't wait. Opportunities don't wait. The people who benefit are the ones who act while others hesitate. By now, you may be feeling a mix of excitement and pressure, and that's intentional. Because the final act of this story is about choice. You can ignore this information and continue treating old pennies like spare change, or you can step into a different mindset entirely. One where you recognize that wealth often hides inside ordinary things, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. The 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is not just a coin. It is proof that history rewards attention. Right now, demand remains strong. Verified examples continue to command extraordinary prices. And as awareness spreads, competition intensifies. Those who act early position themselves differently than those who wait. This is how collectors think. This is how opportunities are seized. And this is how seemingly small discoveries can lead to profound financial outcomes. So the next time you hear the faint clink of change, don't dismiss it. Listen. Because sometimes, the smallest sound carries the loudest message. And for those willing to pay attention, that message could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee can, or an old jar on a shelf. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not gold. Not stocks. Not crypto. A penny. And here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves: what if that penny is already in your home, and you don't even know it? Stay with me, because the story you're about to hear has changed lives, shocked collectors, and created overnight wealth from a coin most people once tossed into a tip jar. This is the story of the 1969 Lincoln penny with a D mint mark, a coin born in an era of moon landings, muscle cars, and American ambition. 1969 wasn't just another year. It was a turning point for the nation. And while the world was watching astronauts walk on the moon, the U.S. Mint quietly released pennies that would later become legends. One of them, struck in Denver, carried subtle errors so rare and so valuable that today, collectors compete fiercely to own one. Some verified examples have been associated with market valuations reaching as high as $572,000, and demand has only intensified. Now here's where the story gets interesting, and a little unsettling. When these pennies were first released, no one cared. They were spent at gas stations, dropped in parking lots, and handed out as change at grocery stores. No alarms. No headlines. No warnings. Imagine holding something today that could change your financial future, and treating it like spare change. Sounds crazy, right? Yet that's exactly what happened. And it's happening again right now, in homes all across America. Let me ask you something, and be honest. When was the last time you actually looked at the pennies you own? Not glanced at them. Looked at them. If your answer is, "I don't remember," you're not alone. Most people ignore pennies completely. That's what makes this opportunity so powerful, and so dangerous to miss. Because while most people are distracted, informed sellers are quietly turning old coins into life-changing money. the 1969 D Lincoln penny is especially fascinating because of its minting anomalies, errors so subtle they escaped detection for years. We're talking about rare die characteristics, misalignments, and production irregularities that only occurred in extremely limited numbers. These aren't scratches. These aren't damaged coins. These are authentic mint errors created during production, mistakes that can never be replicated. And in the coin world, you cannot manufacture rarity. Once it's gone forever. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. If I offered you a lottery ticket with better odds than Powerball, and it was already sitting in your house, would you throw it away? Of course not. Yet people unknowingly do that every single day with rare pennies. The difference between someone who stays comfortable and someone who builds wealth often comes down to awareness and timing. And timing is everything right now. That we are living in a historic moment for rare coin demand. Wealthy collectors, private investors, and auction houses are aggressively acquiring verified error coins, especially iconic American pieces like Lincoln pennies. Why? Because tangible assets with documented rarity are becoming a hedge against economic uncertainty. Inflation rises. Markets swing. But a verified rare coin with historical significance doesn't disappear, it becomes more desirable. And that demand is pushing prices higher, faster, and more urgently than most people realize. Now let's talk about fear, not the bad kind, but the kind that wakes people up. The fear of missing out. The fear of realizing, 5 years from now, that you once had a coin worth 6 figures and spent it on a cup of coffee. That fear is real, and collectors feel it every day. That's why when a legitimate 1969 D penny error surfaces, the response is immediate. Authentication. Grading. Auctions. Competition. The coin doesn't wait. The market moves quickly, and the window closes fast, but here's the exciting part, the empowering part. You don't need to be a lifelong collector to benefit. You don't need to understand every technical detail. You just need to recognize that knowledge creates leverage. The people who win in this market are not necessarily experts, they are people who take action. They check. They verify. They protect what they have. And sometimes, that single decision leads to financial freedom, legacy wealth, and a completely different lifestyle. Picture this. A quiet afternoon. You're sorting through old belongings. Maybe coins from a parent, a grandparent, or your own childhood. You notice a 1969 penny. There's a small D beneath the date. Your heart skips, just slightly. You remember hearing something. You decide not to ignore it. That moment, right there, is where ordinary life and extraordinary outcomes diverge, and let's be clear. Not every 1969 D penny is rare. But every rare one was once ignored. That's the paradox. High-value coins don't announce themselves. They wait to be discovered by someone paying attention. And in today's market, attention is worth money, real money. So here's the question that brings this story full circle. If the possibility exists, if even a slim chance remains, that a penny you own could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, isn't it worth looking? Isn't it worth protecting your future, honoring the past, and positioning yourself for a wealth opportunity that most people will never even see, because history doesn't reward those who dismiss small things. It rewards those who recognize value before the crowd does. The 1969 D Lincoln penny is not just a coin. It's a reminder that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers. And the people who listen, those are the ones who live differently. So before you ignore that jar of coins again, before you assume it's just a penny, remember this story. Remember this moment. And remember that life-changing value often hides in the most unexpected places, waiting for someone like you to finally notice. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a single copper penny is quietly worth more than most people's homes. It's not gold. It's not silver. It's not locked in a museum. It may be sitting in a drawer, a coffee can, or a jar that hasn't been opened in decades. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to hear: the majority of Americans unknowingly spend or discard coins that collectors would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for. Let me ask you something before we go any further. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not glanced at them, really looked. Because today, we're uncovering the story of the 1977 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin with a rare era that has shocked the numismatic world, driven collectors into bidding wars, and reached a current market value as high as $573,000. Yes, one penny. Take a breath. This is real. Act 1 begins in 1977. America was changing. Inflation was rising, factories were booming, and the U.S. Mint was producing millions of Lincoln pennies for everyday use. In Philadelphia, pennies were struck without mint marks, just as they had been for generations. Nothing seemed unusual. No alarms. No headlines. But hidden inside that massive production run, a microscopic mistake occurred, an error so subtle that it slipped past inspectors, entered circulation, and vanished into ordinary pockets. That mistake would later become one of the most sought-after penny errors in modern American history. This is where the fear sets in, because coins like this weren't preserved, they were spent. On coffee. On gas. On groceries. And that means some of them are still out there. Possibly closer than you think. Now here's the part that resets your attention. Ready? The most valuable pennies ever discovered didn't come from vaults. They came from kitchen drawers. Shoe boxes. Old piggy banks. One collector famously joked, "My retirement plan was hiding under my couch cushions." Funny, until it's not. Because when experts examined certain 1977 no-mint mark pennies, they found rare error combinations, dramatic double dies, misaligned strikes, off-center impressions, and precision flaws that transformed a 1-cent coin into a six-figure asset. Collectors don't see these as mistakes. They see them as fingerprints, proof of rarity, authenticity, and history that can never be duplicated again. Act 2 is where excitement takes over. Once word spread within elite collecting circles, demand exploded. Auction houses began listing authenticated examples. Bidding wars erupted. Prices climbed. And then something remarkable happened: the market didn't cool down. It intensified. High-grade error examples of the 1977 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny started commanding values once reserved for legendary coins. The current documented market valuation has reached $573,000, and experts agree this number reflects demand, not hype. Why? Because the supply is brutally limited, and the buyers are serious. Wealthy collectors. Investment funds. Legacy builders. People who understand that rare coins aren't just collectibles, they're portable wealth. Here's a question that might make you uncomfortable, but it matters. If you unknowingly owned a coin worth $500,000, would you recognize it? Most people wouldn't. And that's exactly why this opportunity still exists. Fear isn't about loss, it's about missing what's already yours. Every year, fewer of these coins remain undiscovered. Every year, more are locked away in private collections. And every year, the window narrows. This isn't speculation. This is a documented market reality driven by scarcity and desire. Let's reset the energy for a second. If pennies were boring, people wouldn't be getting rich from them. Think about that. A single cent outperforming stocks, outperforming savings accounts, outperforming inflation. That's not luck. That's knowledge meeting timing. The 1977 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny represents something deeper. It represents the hidden value inside ordinary American history. A coin made for everyone, now affordable to almost no one. Act 3 is where urgency meets empowerment. If you're watching this, you're not here by accident. You're here because something told you to look closer. To pay attention. To stop assuming value always looks expensive. Many Americans who sold rare pennies didn't start as collectors. They started as people cleaning out old drawers, inherited boxes, or forgotten jars. What changed their lives wasn't the coin, it was the decision to investigate before dismissing. This is a market driven by demand, protected by authentication, and fueled by buyers who are ready right now, and let's be honest for a moment, wealth isn't about working harder forever. It's about recognizing leverage when it appears. Rare coins like this don't announce themselves with flashing lights. They wait quietly for someone informed enough to notice. That's why professional buyers pay top dollar. That's why auction houses compete. That's why the 1977 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is no longer just a coin, it's a financial instrument with history, credibility, and global demand. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Somewhere in America tonight, someone is unknowingly holding a penny worth more than their annual income. That may sound unbelievable, until it's you. Look at your coins. Respect them. Verify them. Because the difference between pocket change and generational wealth is often one informed decision. And when opportunity comes wrapped in copper, the people who win are the ones who don't overlook it. The question isn't whether these pennies are valuable. The market has already answered that. The only question left is whether you'll be one of the few who recognize the moment before it passed. And yet, collectors are willing to pay up to $573,000 for it. Not for gold. Not for diamonds. For a penny. And the uncomfortable truth is this: most people who owned it already spent it, because they never knew what they were holding. If that thought makes your stomach tighten just a little, stay with me, because what you're about to hear could completely change the way you look at every coin you own. Welcome to one of the most fascinating stories in modern American coin history, the 1985 Lincoln penny era, a coin that has shocked collectors, driven bidding wars, and quietly turned everyday people into unexpected winners. This is not a rumor. This is not hype. This is documented collector demand, and the clock is ticking. Because every year, more of these coins disappear forever, either damaged, lost, or spent by someone who didn't stop to look closely enough. And the question you should be asking yourself right now is simple: what if one of them is already in your home? Let's rewind to the mid-1980s. America was changing. The U.S. Mint was producing millions upon millions of pennies at the Denver Mint, marked with a small but powerful D. These coins were never meant to be rare. They were meant to be fast, efficient, and forgettable. But in the world of coin collecting, mistakes don't destroy value, they create legends. And during the production of certain 1985 Lincoln pennies, something went wrong in a way no one noticed at first. A subtle error. A deviation invisible to the untrained eye. And that error is precisely what turned a 1-cent coin into a six-figure prize. Now here's where it gets interesting, and a little unsettling. These error coins didn't leave the mint wrapped in red velvet or stamped valuable. They were released into circulation like everything else. They passed through gas stations, grocery stores, movie theaters, and vending machines. They landed in pockets, purses, and couch cushions. Which means the person who first owned a coin now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars likely bought a cup of coffee with it. If that doesn't make you pause and think, let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable: how many pennies have you already ignored today? Collectors later discovered that certain 1985 Lincoln pennies exhibited extraordinary minting flaws, errors so rare and so desirable that demand exploded once they were authenticated. These weren't cosmetic issues. These were structural anomalies that occurred during the striking process itself. When confirmed by professional grading services, the market response was immediate and aggressive. Serious collectors don't hesitate when history presents itself. They compete. They bid. And they pay. That is how we arrived at a current market valuation reaching $573,000 for top-tier examples. Now, I can almost hear someone saying, "It's just a penny." And that's exactly what people said about the 1943 copper penny, until one sold for over $1 million. Humor me for a second: if a penny could pay off your mortgage, would you still call it just a penny? Because in the collector world, value isn't about size or shine. It's about scarcity, story, and survival. And the 1985 penny checks all three boxes with authority. this is where urgency enters the room. The number of verified high-value examples is extremely small, and every year the supply tightens. Coins are lost, mishandled, cleaned improperly, or destroyed. Meanwhile, demand continues to rise as new collectors enter the market and established buyers grow more aggressive. This isn't a trend, it's a trajectory. And the people who benefit are not the ones who wait for permission. They are the ones who act while others hesitate. Here's the exciting part: you don't need to be wealthy to participate in this market. Many of the most valuable pennies ever discovered were found by everyday Americans who simply knew what to look for, and took action. Retirees. Blue-collar workers. Families cleaning out old homes. People who decided that curiosity was worth more than complacency. And when they discovered what they had, their financial story changed overnight. Not because of luck, but because of awareness that if you own old pennies, especially from the 1980s, you are holding a silent opportunity. And no, not every penny will be valuable, but it only takes one. One authenticated error. One confirmed specimen. One moment of decision. That's how real wealth stories begin. Quietly. Unexpectedly. And often too late for the people who didn't bother to look. So before you dismiss this, before you scroll past, before you assume someone else gets lucky, ask yourself this: what if the difference between where you are now and where you want to be is already sitting in your home? Because the collectors are ready. The market is active. And the pennies? They're disappearing fast. Imagine opening a small jar that's been sitting quietly in your home for decades. No fireworks. No dramatic music. Just a handful of pennies you almost threw away. And then, without warning, one single coin in that pile changes everything. What if I told you that a 1991 D. Lincoln penny, a coin most people have spent without a second thought, has reached reported valuations as high as $574,000 in today's collector market? Yes, $500,000. And here's the unsettling part: millions of Americans may have already let this coin slip through their fingers. If that makes your heart beat a little faster, good. Because this is one of those stories where attention pays. Literally, this is not a fairy tale, and it's not nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. This is about timing, awareness, and the quiet power of overlooked assets. In 1991, the Denver Mint produced millions of Lincoln pennies. At the time, nobody celebrated them. Nobody saved them. Nobody imagined they would one day command the kind of attention usually reserved for luxury homes or high-end investments. But history has a habit of rewarding those who look twice. And somewhere between rushed minting processes and microscopic design details, a rare error variety slipped into circulation, an error that today has collectors, investors, and auction houses competing fiercely. Now let's pause for a second. Quick question: how many pennies do you think you've handled in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Enough to pave a driveway? Exactly. And that's where the tension begins. Because the most expensive coins in America are often the ones people ignored the longest. Fear creeps in right here, the fear that the coin that could have changed your financial future was spent on coffee. But excitement follows close behind, because this story isn't over. Not even close. The 1991 D. Lincoln penny error isn't about age alone. It's about precision, or the lack of it. Certain examples reveal striking minting anomalies: double dies, off-center strikes, improper metal flow, and design irregularities so subtle they escaped detection for years. These aren't defects. In the world of numismatics, they are fingerprints. And fingerprints create identity. Identity creates rarity. And rarity creates wealth. That's the chain. Break one link and the value disappears, but when all links align, the market responds with urgency. Here's where demand enters the picture, and it enters loudly. The modern coin market is no longer just hobbyists with magnifying glasses. It's high-net-worth collectors, investment groups, and international buyers who understand that rare U.S. error coins are finite. No mint can reproduce 1991 errors. No technology can recreate original circulation mistakes. Once collectors lock these coins away, they are gone from the open market, sometimes forever. And that's why reported sales and valuations have surged, pushing top-tier specimens of this penny into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now let me interrupt this serious moment with a little reality check, because humor keeps us sharp. Isn't it ironic that the same penny people complain about clogging their pockets could quietly outperform traditional investments? A penny that can't buy gum, but might buy freedom. Funny how that works. And yet, that irony is exactly why opportunity exists. Most people are still laughing. The smart money is already searching. As awareness spreads, urgency accelerates. Coin dealers are actively seeking high-grade examples. Grading services are flooded with submissions. Auctions are becoming battlegrounds. And here's the uncomfortable truth: as more people learn what to look for, the window narrows. Early discoverers benefit the most. Latecomers pay premiums. This is not speculation, it's market behavior repeated across every major collectible boom in American history. What makes this especially powerful for you, right now, is proximity. This isn't an abstract investment locked behind hedge funds or insider networks. This is tangible. It's physical. It's possibly already in your possession. And the moment you recognize it for what it is, your relationship with money shifts. Because wealth doesn't always announce itself with luxury branding. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, disguised as something ordinary. Picture the emotional pivot, the moment when uncertainty turns into confidence. When curiosity turns into action. When a simple inspection leads to professional grading, and suddenly the conversation changes. You're no longer asking what a penny is worth. You're deciding when to sell and how to maximize value. That's empowerment. That's control. And for many Americans, especially those who've worked hard their entire lives, that control feels long overdue. And let's be honest, this isn't just about money. It's about what money enables. Security. Comfort. Choice. The ability to say yes to experiences instead of worrying about expenses. The freedom to live intentionally instead of reactively. Coins like the 1991 D-era penny symbolize more than metal, they represent overlooked potential, both in assets and in people. As we move toward the end of this story, the threads connect clearly. A common coin. A rare mistake. A rapidly tightening market. And individuals who are waking up to the fact that wealth sometimes whispers before it roars. The only real risk now is indifference. Because once these coins are absorbed into permanent collections, the opportunity doesn't come back. History doesn't rewind. Markets don't wait. So here's the final thought: lean in close. The difference between regret and reward is often just attention. That penny you ignored yesterday could be tomorrow's turning point. The question isn't whether these coins are in demand. They are. The question is whether you'll recognize opportunity before it recognizes someone else. Picture this for a moment. A single penny. Brown, ordinary, almost invisible. The kind of coin you wouldn't bend down to pick up if it fell under your car seat. Now let me ask you a dangerous question: what if that exact penny was quietly worth more than $500,000? What if it has already been traded in hushed conversations, locked behind glass, and chased by elite collectors who don't blink at six-figure price tags? Tonight, we're stepping into one of the most fascinating modern coin mysteries in America, the 1995 D. Lincoln penny with a rare mint error, an overlooked survivor from everyday change that has ignited fear, excitement, and urgency across the U.S. collector market. This is not a fairy tale. This is not internet hype. This is a true story about how wealth sometimes hides in plain sight. And before you smile and think, "I've heard this before," let me stop you right there, because millions of Americans have jars, drawers, coffee cans, and inherited collections sitting untouched, while demand for rare Lincoln cents has never been higher. Here's the uncomfortable truth: most people don't lose money because they make bad investments. They lose money because they never realize what they already own. And in the world of rare coins, ignorance is expensive. Act 1 begins in 1995, inside the Denver Mint. Billions of pennies were struck that year, and almost all of them were ordinary. But as history has proven again and again, it only takes one mistake, one microscopic deviation, to turn pocket change into generational wealth. A small number of 1995 D. Lincoln pennies escaped the mint carrying dramatic era characteristics, the kind that seasoned numismatists instantly recognize as once-in-a-lifetime anomalies. These coins weren't advertised. They weren't announced. They slipped quietly into circulation, spent at gas stations, grocery stores, and vending machines. And that's what makes this story so powerful. No one knew what they were holding. Now here's where the tension tightens. Decades later, collectors began noticing something unsettling. Certain 1995 D pennies showed striking abnormalities, errors so rare they challenged mint records. When authenticated, graded, and confirmed as top-tier examples, these coins triggered bidding wars that shocked even veteran dealers. One headline-making valuation stunned the market with a figure whispered across auction floors: $534,000. Let that number sit with you for a second. That's not retirement money. That's freedom money. That's never ask for permission again money. And it came from a penny most people still throw into tip jars. Here's a quick pattern break for you. Be honest, when was the last time you actually looked at a penny before spending it? Exactly. That's how these fortunes slip away. And that's why fear plays such a powerful role here. Fear of missing out. Fear that the coin you spent last week might have paid off your house. Fear that someone else is getting rich from something you already own. That fear is justified, because demand for authenticated era pennies is exploding, and supply is brutally limited. Once these coins are locked into private collections, they're gone, sometimes forever. Act 2 is where reality sets in, and excitement takes over. The collector market today is not your grandfather's hobby. High net worth buyers, investment funds, and international collectors are aggressively hunting modern U.S. era coins, especially Lincoln cents with documented mint anomalies. Why? Because they are tangible, finite, historically American, and immune to inflation in ways paper assets are not. A confirmed 1995 D era penny at the highest grades doesn't just represent metal, it represents bragging rights, status, and scarcity. And scarcity always wins. What makes this coin so desirable is not just the era itself, but the story behind it. A modern coin, from a year everyone remembers, tied to Lincoln, the most collected figure in American coinage, combined with Denver Mint provenance. It checks every box serious buyers care about. That's why market interest has surged, and that's why valuations have reached eye-watering levels when the right example surfaces. Collectors are not asking, is it expensive? They're asking, will I ever see another one? Let me interrupt for a second with a little humor, because this part matters. If pennies could talk, most of them would say, spend me. This one would say, frame me. And the tragedy is that most people never let it speak. They never slow down long enough to inspect what's already theirs. Meanwhile, others are quietly turning old change into life-altering wealth. Act 3 is where urgency enters the room and doesn't leave. Right now, thousands of Americans between the ages of 30 and 65 are sitting on inherited coins, old rolls, and forgotten jars. Many assume the valuable coins were already pulled out. That assumption is dangerous. The truth is, rare era coins are still being discovered today, because knowledge spreads slower than opportunity. The market does not reward hesitation. It rewards those who act before the crowd catches on, and here's the positive reality: this is not about luck. This is about awareness. If you own 1995 D. Lincoln pennies, you are already in the game. The difference between wealth and regret is taking the time to verify, authenticate, and understand what you have before selling it for face value. Collectors are paying premiums not because they're generous, but because they understand something most people don't. Once these coins disappear into vaults, the door closes behind them. Imagine what it would feel like to discover that a simple coin from your past could rewrite your future. Imagine the confidence of knowing you didn't miss your moment. This is why the 1995 D. Lincoln penny error has become one of the most talked about modern US coins in high-end circles. Not because everyone has one, but because almost no one does, and everyone wants one. So the real question isn't whether these coins are valuable. The market has already answered that. The real question is this: will you be the person who unknowingly lets a fortune slip through their fingers, or the person who recognized opportunity when it was quiet, unassuming, and hiding in plain sight? Because history has a funny sense of humor, and it often rewards those who pay attention to the smallest details. Most people think pennies are worthless. That belief alone has quietly cost Americans millions of dollars. And today, I'm going to tell you about one small copper coin, minted in 2007, marked with a tiny D, that has already shattered that illusion and stunned professional collectors. Because right now, this exact Lincoln penny error is commanding attention at the highest levels of the numismatic market, with a recorded valuation reaching $536,000. Yes, a single penny. Before you dismiss this as hype, ask yourself one uncomfortable question: what if the most valuable asset you own is sitting unnoticed in a jar, a drawer, or your pocket change? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may look at every penny you've ever ignored with completely new eyes. This story begins in 2007, a year most people remember for economic uncertainty and the early cracks in the financial system. While headlines focused on collapsing markets, the U.S. Mint in Denver was quietly producing Lincoln pennies like it always had. Billions of coins rolled off the presses, unnoticed, uncelebrated, and assumed to be ordinary. But hidden among those billions was a rare minting anomaly, a deviation so subtle that even experienced handlers missed it at first. This was not a gimmick. This was not damage after the fact. This was a genuine mint error, born at the moment of creation, and those are the kinds of mistakes collectors will pay almost anything to own. Now here's where things get interesting. The 2007 D. Lincoln penny error isn't valuable because it's old. It's valuable because it should not exist the way it does. The alignment, the strike characteristics, and the structural inconsistency place it into a category of elite error coins, pieces that disrupt the perfection of modern minting. And disruption creates demand. Collectors don't chase perfection, they chase rarity. And rarity is born from error. Think of it like a misprinted $1 million bill, except this one is real, legal, and already proven in the market. At this point, you might be thinking, come on, a penny worth more than a luxury home? Fair question. But let me ask you something in return: how many people laughed at Bitcoin in 2010? Exactly. History has a habit of rewarding those who look closely while others look away. High net worth collectors are not emotional buyers, they are strategic. They understand that documented mint errors from the modern era are disappearing fast, locked into private collections and vaults. Supply is shrinking. Demand is accelerating. And once a coin like this is graded, verified, and publicly sold, the entire category moves upward in value. This brings us to the heart of Act 2, discovery. Most owners of rare pennies never knew they had them, until it was almost too late. Coins like the 2007 D. Lincoln error don't announce themselves. They hide in circulation. They blend in. They wait. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. Right now, there are still undiscovered examples out there. Maybe in an inherited collection. Maybe in a forgotten roll. Maybe sitting in a box labeled "Bold Change" that hasn't been opened in 20 years. That thought should excite you, and scare you just a little. Because every year, more of these coins are lost forever, spent, melted, damaged, while their surviving counterparts skyrocket in value. Let's pause for a second. Quick reality check. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny before tossing it aside? Be honest. If pennies had feelings, they'd need therapy by now. And yet, this tiny overlooked coin has outperformed stocks, real estate, and gold in one critical way: it exists in a market driven by obsession, not logic. Collectors don't ask, "Is this reasonable?" They ask, "Can I get it?" And when the answer is no, the price climbs. The current market valuation reaching $536,000 didn't happen overnight. It happened because the right coin met the right buyer at the right time in a market that is hungry for authenticated, top-tier error pennies. Auction houses have documented a surge in demand for modern Lincoln errors, especially Denver Mint issues, because they combine familiarity with extreme scarcity. Everyone recognizes Lincoln. Almost no one owns this error. That contrast fuels competition. And competition fuels price. Now we enter Act 3, Decision and Transformation. This is where most people hesitate, and hesitation is expensive. The individuals who turn rare coins into life-changing money are not necessarily experts, they are action takers. They understand one simple truth: value is only unlocked when knowledge meets movement. If you suspect you own a 2007 D. Lincoln penny with unusual characteristics, the worst thing you can do is ignore it. The second worst thing is to sell it without proper verification. The right move, every time, is authentication, grading, and strategic exposure to the market. This is not about luck. This is about awareness. The wealthiest collectors in America didn't build fortunes by dismissing small details. They built them by recognizing significance where others saw nothing. That same opportunity exists here, right now. And it won't last forever. As more examples are found and absorbed into private collections, availability drops. And when availability drops in a market already fueled by demand, prices don't rise politely, they jump. Imagine the shift. One moment, it's just a penny. The next, it's leverage. Options. Security. Freedom. That's not fantasy, that's already happened for sellers who understood the moment they were in. And the most powerful part? This opportunity doesn't require insider connections or massive capital. It requires attention, curiosity, and the courage to take the next step. So before you roll your eyes at the next penny you see, pause. Look closer. Because somewhere out there, another 2007 D. Lincoln penny error is waiting to be recognized. And when it is, it won't just change a collection, it will change a life. The only real question left is this: will you be the one who finds it, or the one who almost did? Imagine this for a moment. A single penny. 1 cent. The kind you've ignored, dropped on the floor, or tossed into a jar without a second thought. Now imagine that same penny quietly carrying a potential value whispered to be as high as $586,000. Sounds impossible, right? That disbelief you're feeling right now is exactly why fortunes are missed every single day. And today, we're talking about one of the most talked about modern Lincoln cents in America, the 2020 D. Lincoln penny with a rare mint error that has collectors, dealers, and auction houses watching closely. If you've ever thought, there's no way I own something valuable, this story is about to challenge that belief in a very uncomfortable and exciting way. Let's begin with a question that might make you laugh, but don't answer too quickly. If a penny worth hundreds of thousands of dollars was sitting in your house right now, would you even recognize it? Or would it be hiding in a coffee can, a dresser drawer, or a forgotten box in the garage? That uncomfortable pause you feel is the same pause thousands of Americans had right before discovering their financial wake-up call. Because history has a funny sense of humor. It doesn't announce wealth with flashing lights. It whispers, and most people aren't listening. Act 1 begins in plain sight. In 2020, the Denver Mint produced millions of Lincoln pennies during one of the most chaotic years in modern American history. Amid shutdowns, staffing disruptions, and accelerated production schedules, something unusual happened. A small number of coins escaped the mint with errors that should never exist. These weren't scratches or damage. These were genuine mint anomalies, born during the striking process, locked into the metal forever. And collectors know something most people don't: modern errors are among the fastest rising segments in the numismatic market. Here's where fear quietly enters the room. Because while most people assume only old coins matter, the truth is far more unsettling. Some of the most valuable coins in history were discovered years, not centuries, after they were made. The 2020 penny errors fall into that dangerous category. Dangerous because they look ordinary at first glance. Dangerous because millions of people spent them without realizing what they held. And dangerous because once they're gone forever. Now pause for a second. Be honest. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny before spending it? Exactly. That's how opportunity slips away unnoticed. Act 2 is where excitement takes over. As collectors began examining 2020 Lincoln cents more closely, certain era varieties started drawing serious attention. Coins with striking anomalies, doubled features, abnormal surfaces, and rare planchet irregularities began appearing in private collections and specialized auctions. When authenticated and preserved in high grade, these pieces didn't just sell, they shocked the market. Prices climbed rapidly, fueled by scarcity, modern relevance, and intense demand from collectors who understand that today's overlooked coins are tomorrow's legends, and this is where the story shifts from curiosity to urgency. Because the market doesn't wait. Once a coin is widely recognized, the window closes. Early discoverers benefit. Latecomers watch from the sidelines. Some high-end valuations discussed in collector circles have reached extraordinary territory, with top-tier examples rumored and reported in the upper six-figure range, figures that make people sit up straighter and suddenly remember every jar of coins they've ever ignored. Let me reset your attention with a simple thought. What weighs more, a penny in your hand, or the regret of realizing you spent one that could have changed your lifestyle? Not so funny anymore, is it? What makes the 2020 Lincoln penny particularly powerful is timing. This isn't ancient history. This isn't something your grandfather had to inherit. This is modern America. These coins are still out there. Still circulating. Still waiting to be identified. And collectors know that demand is driven not just by rarity, but by story. A coin tied to a historic year, minted under extraordinary circumstances, carrying an error that should not exist, this is the kind of narrative money follows. Act 3 is where authority and inspiration take center stage. Serious collectors, investors, and sellers understand one thing clearly: wealth favors the prepared. They don't dismiss pennies. They examine them. They protect them. They authenticate them. Because they know the difference between pocket change and portfolio assets is knowledge. And right now, knowledge is your advantage. That if you're between 30 and 65, living in the United States, and you've ever saved coins, even casually, you are part of this story. This isn't about luck. This is about awareness. The people who benefit most from rare coin discoveries aren't treasure hunters. They're everyday Americans who decided to pay attention when others didn't. They asked better questions. They looked twice. And when opportunity revealed itself, they acted instead of hesitating. Here's another quick interruption, because this matters. If someone told you a stock could be sitting in your house, unreported, untaxed, and legally yours, would you ignore it? Of course not. Yet that's exactly how rare coins function, and pennies are the most underestimated of them all. The demand for authenticated error coins continues to grow as more people seek tangible assets in uncertain times. Coins don't disappear in a market crash. They don't depend on apps or passwords. And when a penny becomes a story, a verified error, and a limited supply item, it stops being small. It becomes powerful. So here's the truth, delivered without hype but with clarity. The opportunity isn't guaranteed, but ignoring it guarantees nothing. Somewhere, someone already found a 2020 penny they almost spent. Someone else didn't. The difference between them wasn't intelligence. It was attention.